What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Somewhat Sports Podcast. My name is Chris, and joined by some of the greats, and not just this industry, but this entire world. Jurg and Dame, how are we today?
Always in a good mood, Chris. When you introduce us as two of the best, I feel very humbled by your praise. I appreciate it.
Nice, nice.
I'm
Dame?
fantastic. I have the second overall pick in our fantasy draft while Chris has four. I remember when we did a little mock lottery where he rigged me, so it came back to haunt him. So I'm doing great.
We don't have to talk about fantasy picks. That's for another debate. But yeah, we're all doing well, it seems. And the sports world has news this week. And you know what we're going to do? You know what happens when there's news? We talk about it. For our four listeners of this illustrious page, illustrious brand, as Jurg likes to call it, um, Jurg has been just badgering us, notifying us that there's a plethora of NHL news that he wants to talk about. So we're going to give him the floor. Also, there's a bunch of NBA news that we're going to talk about. Shams with just a a kamikaze of leaks. But of course, we always start with the best. We always start with NHL's finest analyst that not a lot of people know of, but they will soon because he's that damn good. Jurg, talk to me. What do you want to talk about? What is this news that you keep hyping up? So this better be good. Talk to me.
So a lot of this news is predominantly centered around the fact that this next week will be the 2021 expansion draft. The Seattle Kraken are entering the league, and as such, obviously coming into the expansion draft, they will be picking one player from every team. So in order to do that, before we go into that, just like it would happen in the NBA and the MLB, but of course, we haven't seen expansion drafts happen in those sports in quite a while. I don't think. Technically it happened in our lifetime, but we were all very, very young when the Orlando Magic and the Charlotte Bobcats came in. So aside from the NHL expansion to Vegas years ago, a lot of people our age haven't really dealt with a lot of expansion in the pro sports leagues in a few years. So the NHL, of course, there is a player protection list that occurs when it comes to the draft. Every single team in the league is required to protect players from being eligible to be selected by one of two ways, by one of two different lists. Teams can either select 7 forwards, 3 defensemen, and 1 goalie to protect from the expansion draft, or they could pick 8 skaters overall between their forwards and defensemen and 1 goalie. So essentially, it's all about how your team is constructed. If you're a defensive team with a good amount of blue liners, you're probably going to lean more towards that second selection of protecting players. Or if you're how most teams will probably do it, it's going to be 7 forwards, 3 D-men, and a goalie. And a lot of the news this week has been based off of the fact that teams are trying to put together their protection lists. I believe the lists are due in about 2 or 3 days' time. So we're going to be seeing the official protected players list by every single organization very soon, except for Vegas, because Vegas is not participating in the expansion draft. Aside from that, let's get onto it. So why was there big news this week? Well, it's buyout time, boys. In the NHL, the initial buyout period of the offseason has begun, and it is open until July 27th at 5 p.m. So we're well over about another just under 2 weeks or so, I should say, for more guys to get bought out. But the most important news with these recent buyouts is it has to do with the expansion draft, because in the expansion draft, one of the rules with protecting players is if a player has a no move clause in their contract, unless they explicitly waive the clause to the team, they must be protected. So one of your protection slots could get could get automatically used up if a player chooses to not waive that clause. And as a result, we saw some very expensive contract buyouts this past week. I'll start with the most recent one. Within the last 24 hours, it being leaked that Keith Yandle, the Florida Panthers, is being bought out of his deal. Yandle, actually, compared to most contract buyouts, made it well within to his contract that he signed with the Panthers way back. He signed a 7-year deal now 5 years ago with the team, just under $45 million on that contract. Made it through the first 5 seasons. Honestly, was still a pretty good defender in the first 3 years of the contract. Put up the points in year 4, but you started to see his defense decline a little bit. And then it was this past season, year number 5 for Florida, where the team just kind of fell out of love with him, and they made him a healthy scratch in the playoffs, which for a guy that was taking up well over $6 million of their salary cap space, that is not something you should be doing come the most important games of the season, is sitting that guy when he's healthy. So it was kind of, written in the stars that they were going to get rid of him, and they did. Now, the way contract buyouts go in the NHL, what essentially goes down is you multiply the remaining salary that the player has by the buyout amount in order to obtain the buyout cost, and then you spread out the buyout cost evenly over twice the remaining contract years. So if a player has 4 years left on their deal, you take the remaining salary, you divvy it up over like an 8-year period, let's say. Or in Yandel's case, it was just 2 years left, so they took however much was left on his deal and they spread it out over 4 years. It's not necessarily the exact amount, because depending on like the age of the player when they're bought out, there's also nuances to that. But essentially, Yandel is getting bought out, and his salary cap hits will now be spread across 4 years. The Panthers will get pretty good short-term savings on it with a $4 million relief for this upcoming season, but then next year it'll be a salary cap hit of $5 million, so it'll be a dead cap hit of $5 million. Before the last 2 years of this buyout will just be over $1.2 million for each year, so it's not too bad. The reason, like I said, this is important was because Keith Yandel did have a no move clause, and the team would have been forced to protect him in the expansion draft. So they just decided, hey, we're not going to deal with this. They were probably going to get rid of him anyways, even without the expansion draft. But this just essentially forced their hand. They're going to get rid of him. So he's going to get a somewhat early start on free agency, you could say. So good for him, but more so good for the team. They get this $4 million for this season of relief, and as well as they don't need to waste one of their protection slots on him. And that is very prevalent in the decisions made earlier this week by the Minnesota Wild. They officially bought out two players, Ryan Suter and Zach Parise, of their long-time contracts that those two signed. You guys, this is going to fascinate you two, because I know whenever I've spoken about contracts, I haven't spoken big numbers. But 9 years ago, Parise and Suter signed matching 13-year, $98 million contracts with the Minnesota Wild way back when. And after 9 years with the organization, the team has finally decided to buy the both of them out, ending what is essentially summarized as, you could say, a mediocre era for the team. They did make the playoffs quite a few times with Parise and Suter. I believe they made the playoffs at least 4 times, maybe 5 times under the both of them. So about a 50% success rate in their seasons of making the playoffs or not. But they never got far. I think they only made it past the first round one time. And that one time they made it past the first round, they were easily handled in like 4 or 5 games. I want to say it was by the Chicago Blackhawks, funny enough. So just overall, it wasn't a successful tenure, you could say. And now this is going to be, of the buyouts you're going to see and hear of, because trust me, these will not be the last buyouts that we'll hear of this week. These are easily the most expensive ones. So this year, it'll just be a $2.37 million cap hit for both guys. So the combined cap hit between the two will be about $4.75 million, give or take, for this season for the dead cap. But then the next season, the dead cap hit for getting rid of the both of them will be $12.6 million. And then the 2 years after that, it'll be nearly $15 million of dead cap space for consecutive seasons for buying out both of their contracts, and followed by 4 more years of $833,000 for the dead cap hit. So obviously, in case you couldn't tell, in the long term, with buying out these expensive contracts in the NHL, that's where they get the relief. But obviously, in the short term for these teams, for Minnesota, even though they're going to be very, very handicapped in terms of how they're going to build their roster the next few years, they obviously didn't want to waste any time, because yes, these two both had no movement clauses on their contracts, and they would have been forced to protect them, because neither man was going to waive that no movement clause for the expansion draft. And quite honestly, I don't think Seattle would have taken either of them to BH. Maybe Zach Parise at best, or Suter, depending on how the draft shakes up. But ultimately, most likely, neither guy was going to get selected, because the Seattle Kraken have quite a few other players that are out there that they could potentially go after who are already high cap hits. So I highly doubt either Parise or Suter would have been chosen. So it just made more sense for the Wild to, pick both these contracts and say, hey, we're not going to do this. We're going to buy both of them out. And this is obviously, like I've said, it all points to one thing happening, and that is the 2021 expansion draft going down. And I'm very excited for that. That is going to be happening on the 21st. So next week we're going to get the expansion draft. I'm very, very excited for it. I've been waiting. I know Chris has been waiting for it. He's finally ready to start cheering for his hockey team because he has long since claimed the Seattle Kraken for himself. Ain't that right,
Uh,
Chris?
yeah. I guess I'm the first one there. Do you know any other fellow Kraken eye? I don't know. I don't know what the Kraken heads. Crackheads. I'm a crackhead,
Oh
bro.
no, I could check back in with some of the people I know, see if any of them are gonna commit to being Kraken fans. I think a couple of them follow me that I've worked with, so we'll see. You know, you got some people to work with there. But yes, the expansion draft next week, I'm very excited for. Essentially, what the Kraken will be doing is that they must select at least one player from each team, obviously once again except for Vegas, and they have to pick from all their selections they're going to get. They must get at least 14 forwards, 9 defensemen, and 3 goalies from the expansion draft. Now, obviously, with this, a lot of people are wondering, you know, what's going to happen here? Is it just going to be simple where the Kraken are just going to pick players from each team and that's that? It actually won't be that. So, from the 18th to the 21st, the Seattle Kraken will have a window of time to interview and sign any pending free agents from these teams that are left unprotected. Because a couple of selected free agents from these teams, depending on how long they've been in the league, are actually still eligible to be selected. So if the Kraken want to, they could actually select a player, you know, before the expansion draft starts. And if they can negotiate a deal with that player and his representation, they can add that player to the roster. And it essentially takes someone that counts as the selection for a team. So for example, if they decide to go after Tyson Barrie of the Edmonton Oilers and Edmonton doesn't want to protect him because they feel it wouldn't be worth using one of their protected slots on, they can negotiate with Barrie, they could sign him, and then that counts as the player they'll take from Edmonton in the draft. So Edmonton wouldn't have to worry come draft night. Barrie would be the guy. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of side deals Seattle works on in this time frame and on the night of. And the reason why I say side deals is because for those of you that either were fans and were around for the 2017 expansion draft, or you want to hear some of the stuff, it's not just going to be simple, you know, Seattle will take whoever. Teams are going to wheel and deal a lot with the Seattle Kraken to try to get them to pick specific players. I have a couple trades here back in 2017 that just kind of exemplify what I'm talking about. So, for example, back in 2017, the Florida Panthers worked out in a deal with the Vegas Golden Knights that they traded Riley Smith to Vegas and a 4th round pick in order to coerce Vegas into selecting Jonathan Marchessault from the team in that draft. The Tampa Bay Lightning traded their 2017 second round pick and a 2018 4th round pick and another player to coerce Vegas into selecting a specific defenseman on the team, Jason Garrison. The Anaheim Ducks, the Minnesota Wild traded Alex Tuck to Vegas in exchange for them selecting Eric Haula. So as you could tell, boys, it's not as simple as, you know, Seattle's going to pick whoever. The teams are willing to trade, you know, picks, other players, etc., to try to get them to take specific pieces off of their hands. And this is going to be something that I'm really going to be interested to see how much wheeling and dealing Seattle is doing, because right now, as we speak, Seattle is actually, it was reported that the Seattle management has been talking to other teams. Other teams are trying to see what it'll take to maybe get Seattle to pick specific players and take them off their hands. So it's going to be real interesting to see how this all plays out. And ultimately, what Seattle is going for here is to try to have a good expansion draft going into the main NHL entry draft, which will happen just a couple days after the entry draft. I believe the 23rd is the night of the first round, I should say. So I'm going to be interested to see how this all ties in together, because Seattle has expectations to live up to because of how good Vegas has done in year one. Now, I don't think it's fair to put that expectation on them. I think Seattle should have their own way of doing this. We can't expect them to be a 45-plus win team like Vegas was in year one. I don't think that's realistic. But I think we should hopefully expect them to have a good draft. I'm certainly going to hope for that for their sake. They got the second overall pick in the NHL entry draft a couple days later. So this is going to be some fun times for the Seattle Kraken fan. Finally, Chris, you get to see your team be formed. And I already know once the roster is set, Chris is going to immediately text me, who are these guys? Who should I root for on this team? So that essentially is the big news of it. There are quite a few rumors, transactions that have been going on. Like I said, a couple players have already waived their no movement clause for their teams in order to be left unprotected. So will Seattle pick a couple of these names that have been floated out there the last couple of days? They might, but obviously time will tell. And I guess last little bit of news, just because he was a pretty good pro for his career, Nashville Predators goalie Pekka Rinne decided to officially retire. I believe he is the all-time wins leader for the Predators in terms of netminders, which I makes sense. He is the best goalie in Predators history, and I think he's first in just about every single category. And if he ain't first, he's second place in it. So the best goalie in Predators franchise history goes away. He was most known for the 2017 playoff run the team went on when they made it all the way to the Stanley Cup final. In that run, he was just next level. The phrase standing on your head in hockey when it comes to how a goalie plays, he was literally standing on his head throughout the entirety of the playoffs. In that run, he allowed less than 2 goals against per game and had a save percentage of 93%. So he was just next level, and he helped get them 2 wins away from getting the Stanley Cup. Wasn't able to replicate it in future playoff runs after that, sadly, and of course, ultimately with him being overtaken by a younger goalie this past season, the writing was on the wall that his time in Nashville was done and his time in the league is done. Salute, Pekka Rinne. You had a marvelous career, and he exits. As one career ends, another career will begin soon with the NHL draft coming in. And yeah, I'm just excited. It's going to be a big week for hockey. A lot of just speculating right now because of the drafts, guys. But I'm just excited to see how everything plays out because I've been waiting for it. I want Vegas to, forget Vegas. I want Seattle to come in and have a good entry draft because that thing is just gonna make things more interesting.
Yeah, fellow crackheads unite, because I got a hot take, Jurg. We're going to make the playoffs the first year.
Hey, I mean, Dame is already going to hold a grudge against the Seattle Kraken. He doesn't. They don't even have a roster yet fully set.
Yeah, just because this guy.
So, assuming, from all intents and purposes, the NHL wants to go back to their old divisional format next season. So that means they'll go back to the old playoff format. So the way it works is that the top 3 teams in each division will clinch playoff spots, and then it's 2 wild card teams. So you could have, and it's separated by East and West. So in the West, you have the Pacific Division and the Central Division. So the Seattle Kraken, they could either get their playoff spot by being one of the top 3, like for sure, or they could hope for some luck and be a wild card team. But then you'd have to hope that the teams in the Central don't do as hot. So it's very up in the air how Seattle could do, because in the Pacific Division, well, honestly, aside from Vegas, there's no clear cut. I'm saying this off the top of my head. When I look back at the division, perhaps I'm missing someone. I guess Edmonton because of McDavid and Draisaitl. But aside from the Oilers and the Knights, like maybe there is an outside shot that the Kraken could make it year 1. Who knows?
Nice. That's all I need to hear. And
happening.
as always, well, look, we got a rivalry going forward now, Jurg. So this is good content. But as always, Jurg delivers beautifully. And now I move on over to the NBA world, where yes, a plethora of news has leaked. I guess a lot of breaking news essentially. Shams decided to kamikaze his way. After I don't know, it's been a while since we got some like breaking news because we're like at the end of the playoffs. The finals are about to be done. But the draft is also, I believe, 2 weeks away. And which that's cool though. I think it's like 1 week after the NHL draft, so we're gonna have a lot to talk about going forward. So, a lot of coaching hires as well. We'll talk about that first. So, the New Orleans Pelicans and the Orlando Magic have found their head coaches. The New Orleans Pelicans will hire Willie Green, I believe, who is the assistant coach to the Phoenix Suns, and the Orlando Magic will hire Jamal Mosley. Jurg, is that right?
I believe so, yes.
Of the Dallas Mavericks. He was the assistant coach. So I guess I'll start off with the Jamal Mosley hire for the Orlando Magic. I actually like this hire a lot. I think he is a very good offensive minded coach from what I've read and from what I've heard. And I think he fits well with his rebuilding Orlando Magic team. I think this is actually a perfect match, to be honest. They need like a player's coach who actually knows like the X's and O's, to be honest. So I think it's a match made in heaven. He has a couple weapons he could play with Cole Anthony, with Wendell Carter Jr., and he's getting Markelle Fultz and Jonathan Isaac back next year. So he has a lot to work with. And I think because like they're a young team, they're going to play very fast paced. So I think you're going to see a lot of Mosley's offensive schemes put to full use because, again, young team, go full speed. fast-paced offense, high-octane offense. So I think the fit was very good. He has been in the shadows for a while. I know he had a very good relationship with Luka Doncic, but he always got like these interviews. I think he interviewed for the Knicks a few years ago before they hired Tom Thibodeau. There was other coaching jobs that he was interviewing for, but now Orlando snagged him, and I think it's a match made in heaven. To be honest, for the Willie Green to the New Orleans Pelicans hiring, I don't know much about Willie Green. I know who Willie Green is, but I don't necessarily know the fit because I don't know. I mean, Jurg, you might know more than you might know more than me and Damien do, but I know he's a players coach. I know he was really cool with CP3, and I think CP3 advocates for him all the time. So it seems that they're going with the players coach direction as well. I guess to appeal to Zion because after all that smoke that came out a few weeks ago about Zion being unhappy about the team's direction, I think they had to hire someone that could, you know, relate to Zion. I guess. I don't necessarily know how he's going to do with the X's and O's, but this seems to me like a hire that is going to be geared towards the relationships of the players as opposed to actually the play style. So I don't know. Dame, what do you have to say about these hirings?
About Willie Green with the Pelicans, I mean, I don't know much about either one of these coaches, but about Green, I just know that he was very highly regarded with like star players. I know when he was assistant for Golden State, and I know Kevin Durant spoke very, very highly of him. So that could have been a reason. I'm sure that was a big reason why the Pelicans brought him on, because he has such a great relationship and so highly regarded by these star players that when you have a guy like Zion that you're trying to keep happy and keep him in New Orleans, and obviously you're trying to bring another star in there to put alongside Zion, having a coach that's highly respected amongst star players in the league is a good thing for them. For the Magic coach, like I'll be honest, I don't know much about him.
Okay. All right. Good research there, Dame. Jurg?
So when it comes to the Orlando hire, I do personally like Jamal Mosley. He was someone that we talked about, Chris, a couple weeks back when when Rick Carlisle stepped down, that he was definitely a candidate to take over because of his relationship with Luka, the fact that he's been a pretty good assistant coach. He was with the Denver Nuggets back when Carmelo was there, and he was on the coaching staff when Denver made their lone deep run with Carmelo when they made the conference finals back in, I think it was 2009 when they faced off with the Lakers. So I think that's a good hire. When it comes to a rebuilding team like the Magic, and I know technically speaking with the 9th and 10th seeds now, there's a shot that they could maybe make the play in, but because they traded Vucevic and Gordon, to me that essentially signals it's rebuilding time in Orlando, which about time. It's really about time. I know some Orlando fans may think this not their first recent rebuild. It kind of is, because back when they traded Dwight, like, yeah, they missed the playoffs, but they didn't necessarily rebuild. And when I say that, I mean a lot of their picks flopped. And my thing with the rebuild is that you need to have successful drafting to properly undergo the process, because then at that point, if you're just going to miss draft after draft, not pointing at anyone specifically, if you're going to miss draft after draft, it's not a rebuild. You just suck. So I think with the Magic, this is a proper rebuild they're going into. Now, they do have some young pieces. Obviously, Fultz and Isaac are going to be there. They both signed extensions. You have some of the players you drafted recently, like Cole Anthony, Mo Bamba. You hope to get something out of. You traded for Wendell Carter. Like, there are pieces there for Mosley to work with. So I think he's the right guy to help
Yeah.
develop these guys, see who fits on the team for the future. Because the thing is, not all these young guys are going to be there forever. Like, he needs to figure out if he could get Fultz and Cole Anthony to what's going to be the game plan with them.
And
Either,
Hampton.
yeah, and RJ Hampton, like, which one of those guys is still going to be there? Because honestly, like, come a year or two from now, one of those three players is not going to be on the team anymore. Same with Mo Bamba and Wendell Carter. Like, one of those two is not going to be on the team for long, because they're both predominantly inside players. Like, I'd give the mid-range game to Wendell Carter over Mo Bamba, in part because Bamba's also been hurt a lot. So it's going to be all about that. I think Mosley has. I don't think there's a real window. There shouldn't be, at least, for success with Orlando. I think he deserves time to develop with this team and like try to make things work. I would say give it at least 2 to 3 years. I'll say 2 years. 2 years until they should start being competitive again for the play-in, because they need to figure everything out. They need to draft well. This draft is going to be a big stepping stone into that, because you think about who's already on this team, he's going to get some young pieces coming in as well. So I love the situation for him. I think he's going to do fine with developing these guys. I wouldn't be shocked. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if in 2 to 3 years they become at least a minimum a play-in team, or yeah, like a 7, 8, 9 seed again, because I think Mosley can do that with this young core. But moving on to the Willie Green thing, like Dame said, he has been widely regarded going back to his assistant coaching days in Golden State when he was KD was a fan of him. I'm sure Steph and Clay were a fan of him. Draymond respects him. So you have that. He was trusted by Steve Kerr, and now the past 2 years with the Phoenix Suns with Monty Williams, Chris Paul speaks highly of him. I'm sure he's had a lot to do with helping Devin Booker and Ayton. The thing with Willie Green is that this is the new wave in the league where when you call him a player's coach, it's not just his ability to connect more with the young players of today. It's the fact that he is going to be very lenient in allowing these guys to do a lot, a la Steve Nash in Brooklyn. When it comes to what Nash does in Brooklyn, yes, there's a level of respect KD and Kyrie have for him, but he also allows them to do a lot of what they want to do. Not even just offensively. I'm talking about off the court stuff. Like, Steve Nash is not that disciplinary. I don't want to call him a disciplinary in a negative way, but like a Popovich or a Rick Carlisle or even Pat Riley when Pat Riley was a coach. Like these guys are nowhere near that. A lot of today's players want these kind of guys that, yes, they'll challenge them, but to an extent. Like, one thing Stan Van Gundy said after he left, like, because he's done an interview or two since he was left the team, essentially fired. He said that the fit just wasn't there, and that the reason that he was fired, it wasn't because they didn't meet expectations. It's because the organization didn't like his coaching fit with the team. That they felt he was probably a little bit too old school compared to what the new school of coaching is. And that's honestly a fact. Like, I'm not saying this to call the players babies. This is just a fact. A lot of these young guys now, they want this kind of coach that, they'll challenge them a little bit, but let them do their thing.
They cater to them, yeah.
Exactly. So that's what the Willie Green hire is. I'm not going to doubt his X's and O's personally, because we don't have any kind of sample size to do that. And I don't think it's fair to go after it, because he was a role player for over a decade. That takes some kind of skill and IQ to have in order to do in the league. And then he's been an assistant coach. He's been recognized by like 3 or 5 of the best in the game today, as well as Steve Kerr, who's a good coach, and Steve Nash, who you could say talent is carrying him, which I'm sure, but again, one of the best basketball minds when he was playing. So I'm going to give him a little benefit of the doubt to see like what he's going to do. Perhaps and this wouldn't shock me, because I think it was the same idea with Steve Nash. Put veteran assistant coaches with him. Let those guys deal predominantly with the X's and O's. Let Green do his thing here and there, but he is there for the players. Green is there for the players. The assistants are there to set up the system. Give it another year for the culture to cultivate. Year 2 of the Willie Green tenure is when we should start to see results, which, funny enough, this is the key. That'll be the last year of Zion's rookie deal. So,
Yeah, that rookie deal is going to be expiring soon, Jurg. Qualifying offer might be a thing. I don't know. I'm just saying things. I'm just saying words. Who knows where it goes? But I do agree with you. I do like where the Orlando Magic are headed, because Mosley's going to have a lot of choice to play with, and they got 2 top 10 picks, I believe, this year. So, and then again, people are coming back from injury, and then he has some promising young players now. So yeah, I think the sky's the limit for him, and I think, you know what? Honestly, I've seen some pretty quick rebuilds, so there's a chance. I mean, the East is going to be a bit better next year, but again, I think they have a shot to get into top 10. To be honest, yeah. So now we move on over to some other news that has occurred in the NBA. Ben Simmons is officially, I don't necessarily want to say he's on the market, but discussions have opened up. The Philadelphia Sixers have opened up discussions with other teams about Ben Simmons. So he's not necessarily on the market, but they're listening to offers, I believe. I think before this report, they denied an offer from the Pacers that included Brogdon and a first. Not as bad as a lot of people make it out to be honest. I think a lot of people sleep on Malcolm Brogdon, but that's not the point. So yeah, we've talked about Ben Simmons before, and possible teams that he might fit on, but now that it's kind of the writing's on the wall, quote unquote, I think this is gonna happen. I think he's gone. It's the fact that this news leaked. It's the fact that Joel Embiid and Doc Rivers kind of took they didn't take shots, but they're subtle shots. I'll just say they're subtle shots at him towards the end of that Atlanta series where they lost. So I think there's a little bit of a disconnect there. I think he's gone. I think we all agreed that he needs a change of scenery. It's said that they're looking for an all-star caliber player in return. I think that's what the report said.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it
Yeah.
said, James.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. One of you. Yeah. So that kind of limits the market for him. I don't know how much interest there's gonna be to trade an all-star caliber player or a blue chipper, to be honest, for Ben Simmons. Again, I've said this before. I don't know if it was on the show, but if I'm a small market team, I think I'm gonna stay away from Ben Simmons because I think like yeah, you have him for the next 4 years. I don't know, 3 years. I don't think he's gonna want to re-sign with a small market team, to be honest. So you're gonna have him for 4 years. Is that promising anything? Is Ben Simmons gonna lead? Is gonna lead like a Portland Trailblazers to a championship within the next 4 years? I don't think so. But again, Portland's in a different position, and I bring them up because they're the team that is kind of, I feel like they could be in the driver's seat for a Ben Simmons if they offer like a McCollum. But again, look, if I'm a small market team, I'm staying away from Ben Simmons because I know there's not a lot of mutual interest, and I don't think he would want to stay in that place. I think that man just wants the big lights. I've said this before. He wants Los Angeles, but that's kind of for a different story. So again, in hindsight, I mean, in general, I think Ben Simmons is gone. I don't know where. I think the Blazers have the best opportunity to get him if they want him. But yeah, Jurg, where do you see this? How do you see this unfolding? Where do you see him going?
So I think it's more than fair to ask for an all-star back for Simmons, or at least a blue chipper, because while people, yes, I definitely understand the point of how this playoff run really showed the issues of his game. But here's the thing you need to remember: this is a 25-year-old, all NBA defensive first team player, a defensive player of the year candidate for the next 5 years at least, who is a 3-time All-Star. And yes, while the shooting is an issue, here's the point. If you put Simmons on a team where there's a perimeter scorer, where they're shooting around him, that's all you need to do. For all the talk about how when people say, when you trade Simmons, you could get so-and-so back and pair like this scoring guard with Embiid, you could do the same thing with Simmons. Like, I don't understand why we're not talking about the fact that Simmons and Embiid is one of the worst fits possible. Like, yes, Embiid can shoot the three, but he's not a perimeter scorer. He's a big man. I don't care how much big men shoot the three more nowadays now. Like, Simmons is just not a fit with him. There's two players in this league that it's not a good fit for Simmons to be on the same team with. It's Embiid and it's Giannis. And I don't need to explain anything about the Giannis thing. So when it comes to the whole Simmons thing, like where he could end up, I don't know, man, because Portland feels like the right place because no matter what, it's going to be Simmons is going to be with one of their perimeter guards and Embiid is going to get back one of their perimeter guards. You mentioned McCollum. My thing is that Philly is going to offer Dame. Philly's going to ask for Dame. And yes, Portland is going to talk about wanting to keep Dame, but I thought the whole point was that Dame is finally going to want to leave here. So like that for me just personally is getting me very annoyed because it's like I want Damian Lillard off the Blazers. So and yes, while Simmons would definitely be an upgrade over CJ McCollum, especially defensively, like does that get them to the conference finals again? Does that even get them to the NBA finals? Like I don't know. So that's the complication around it. Like of course we all agree it's no doubt Simmons is gone. Let's be real here. Like Elton Brand will have officially failed as a GM if he keeps Ben Simmons on this team for this upcoming season because Brand's tenure has not been great. Let's just be honest here. It's not been great. He's made some questionable moves. If he keeps Simmons past this season, I think that's a terrible decision. And for Simmons' safety as well. Like Philadelphia fans are not level-headed individuals all the time. Let's be real here. So, like just for Simmons himself, let's move him. If you're talking about where else he could fit potentially, it's a very complicated issue because again, I'm just thinking of the idea like there needs to be perimeter scoring there. There
Golden
needs
State?
there Golden State could be an option. They just made a trade with dealing 2 first-round picks away, but if they could somehow work it, like Zach LaVine and Ben Simmons would be entertaining because then all LaVine would have to do is just shoot, and then Simmons could be the defender that kind of subjugates the negativity you'll have from Vucevic and LaVine because they're not good defensive players. Like I'm not saying like making a mock trade here. I'm just saying like fits of where he could go. So I think Chicago could be a thing because again, LaVine being there. You mentioned Golden State. Yeah, man, it's just the only reason it's limited is because you need to think about the fit. Like Simmons needs to go somewhere where it's a fit. I saw actually. I want to throw this back to you and Dame because I heard this. I forget where I heard this from. I want to say it was a rumor floated out by someone, like an idea, maybe someone from ESPN or like a former executive or something. But they mentioned the idea of if Phoenix doesn't think it's going to be worth it to re-sign Chris Paul after this season to a long-term deal because he is older, could there be a sign and trade where
Mm.
Phoenix sends Chris Paul to Philly and Ben Simmons would go back the other way to Phoenix? Now, I'm not saying it wouldn't be just I doubt it'd be 1-for-1. I'm sure there'd be more to it, but that was the crux of the deal: Simmons for CP3. I don't know. What do you guys think?
That's an interesting proposition. I don't know. I see the fit for Philly. I see the fit for Philly. Ben Simmons. Ooh, Ben Simmons and Booker.
Yeah, it's not gonna work out. Ben
Yeah,
Simmons and Booker is just gonna be weird. It's just the
yeah.
chemistry is gonna be there.
There's an because those are two guys who have dog like personalities.
Off
And
the
That's what
court,
I'm
off the
talking
court.
about.
You mean off the court?
I'm talking
Off
about
the
Yeah.
off.
court.
I'm
Well,
talking about off the
no,
court.
off the court too, but also I'm talking about on the court. I feel like a lot of these young guys. The reason why the Phoenix worked out this year is because a lot of these guys respect.
Real quick, I guess maybe this is something so that like Chris can answer back to, but like the whole thing with the dog mentality, haven't we kind of seen Simmons doesn't want to be a dog? Like he allowed Embiid to be the guy, did he not?
Yeah, he did, but like the thing is, I think Booker would get really upset with Ben Simmons that he doesn't show the effort needed to try to win. Especially as Booker made the finals now, like he's gonna want more if he loses or wins. He's gonna keep wanting more. A guy like Ben Simmons doesn't care enough. I think that wouldn't sit well with Booker.
So that's what I wanted to bring up. I feel like the reason why I think the Phoenix situation works now is because these guys respect Chris Paul. I don't think the respect factor is going to be there with Ben Simmons, and for good reason too. Because like Ben Simmons, I like you can't just show up there and just command respect. You kind of need to earn it. Chris Paul's kind of earned that throughout his whole career, and he knows like what to do. And I think again, one of the greatest leaders of all time. So I think like the young guys will obviously buy into that. Ben Simmons, again, there's off court stuff. His work ethic is questionable. It's not really off court stuff, but yeah, his work ethic is questionable.
But real quick,
There's
now that there's a culture there, don't you think Phoenix can kind of fix that? Because I think Monty Williams would be the guy. Like like
I
let's
don't
be
think
real here,
so.
but really because Ben Simmons, like he has not had a. I'm sorry, he hasn't had a good coach in his career so far that is known for setting culture. Doc Rivers doesn't set up a culture. He was gifted Chris Paul and Blake Griffin with the Clippers because the Celtics literally traded him there. He was gifted the Celtics big three. Like he's never set up a culture. Monty Williams and Chris Paul have set up a culture that I think CP3 leaving, Booker, Ayton, and them would be enough to keep it there. And I don't think Simmons is, he's not necessarily commanding respect per se. Like, he's not going there and going to tell D Book, I'm going to be the guy now. I think he even understands, like, look, he's the perimeter scorer. Let me be the all NBA defender here because Phoenix needs perimeter, like, that one on one defender. And like I like Bridges and Crowder, but Simmons is better than both of them by a mile.
He is, but I just I don't see him buying into it. There's something about Simmons that just kind of rubs me the wrong way. I just don't think he just I feel like he just doesn't buy in. I feel like he's more about him, to be honest. There's something about his like character that just screams like, yeah, I'll listen to you guys, but in reality, he's like, I'm gonna get
I'm gonna
my
do
own.
my own thing.
Yeah, it's the vibe I get. It's the vibe I've always gotten. Again, I always thought him and Embiid could have worked, but I don't know. Clearly not. I can't see the fit with Phoenix that much. I don't know. There's too much baggage in that anyway. There's also Minnesota's interested. I don't know how Minnesota's gonna get Ben Simmons because first of all, I don't see the fit because well, first of all, they don't want to trade D'Lo. You're obviously gonna keep Cat. Um,
And you're not trading in
you're not trading
Anthony
Edwards. So
Edwards.
who are you gonna trade to get Ben Simmons? What
Malik
Rubio and Beasley
Beasley.
in a first? That's not gonna get it done. Get out. That's laughable. So look, okay, hypothetically, say they get Ben Simmons. I just don't see that working at all, man. Like, yeah, he adds an element of defense that they desperately need, but there are too many people. There's too much people on that team that need the rock in their hands. Cat's gonna need the ball. D'Lo's gonna want to shoot a lot. Edwards is gonna want to shoot a lot. Simmons just wants the ball in his hands. I don't know. There's too much doing.
they're also all just gonna play Fortnite. They're all just gonna want to play Fortnite after practice anyway.
There will not be discipline on that team, man. They'll be fun to watch, I think, but I can't. It just I don't know, very redundant. I think, and the personalities don't match either. If freaking like, bro, Cat's getting upset at Jimmy Butler for like challenging him to be better. Come on, you're not gonna get anywhere with Ben Simmons, who's probably not gonna challenge you. Yeah. And final thoughts on Simmons?
Yeah. So I read a thing or saw a thing on Twitter about the Kings. I saw that they weren't willing to trade De'Aaron Fox, but I saw they were willing to part with Buddy Hield, Bagley, and a couple picks. I personally think might be
That's a
the
good
best they're
offer.
gonna get. Like honestly, like Buddy Hield fits perfectly what they need. Elite shooter off the wing, off Embiid. I guess Bagley's kind of just that like throw in that you hope shows any kind of potential, any sort of like skill from it, all this potential that he had, and you get picks with it as well. So other than like Damian Lillard, who you would obviously have to add to, I just wouldn't take CJ McCollum if it was that. It's if Portland tries calling for Ben Simmons, I try to do a package around Ben Simmons for Lillard. Other than that, I'm hanging up the phone. But with that Sacramento Kings pick, like if you get Buddy Hield, Bagley, and then a couple picks, like I just don't think you get a better offer than that fits your team.
Yeah, it's a matter of if the Sixers are going to be stubborn about this. That is the best offer. I think the Buddy Hield fit is perfect, especially
Yep.
around Embiid. For the Kings, I get it because you want to be a little bit more competitive with Fox. That's a ticking time bomb, in my opinion. I feel like they have 2 more years until Fox just like, yo, I'm out of here. I
Fox to
can't do this
Miami,
shit
baby.
anymore.
It's gonna be good. Fox to
Yeah,
Miami.
yeah. I bet you like that. I bet you like that, Jurg. But also, like, but the Simmons and Fox, like, don't they play kind of similar
Bro, but it's
games?
the
I know they're
Kings.
both.
Like, I'm not surprised. I'm just looking at it from Philly's perspective. Like, the Kings are
Yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
always going to be
Of course.
fuck ups.
Of course. Yeah, I feel bad for Fox. Yeah. Again, we could play Trade Machine all we want, but who knows? Okay, we move on over to I guess the main event because it's box office, baby. Shams reported that the Knicks are the most aggressive suitor for Colin Sexton. Jurg, we're gonna go to you last because I guess me and Dame are the Knicks fans in this podcast, so I guess
That's fair.
we'll set the tone.
Take your time, boys. Take your time.
Yeah, so let me get this out of the way. I understand there are flaws with Colin Sexton. Granted, he was on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I feel like no matter what player you are, the situation's always gonna look a little bit worse than what it is because it's the Cleveland Cavaliers. Sorry, that's just true. They're kind of a dysfunctional organization. Now, to Colin Sexton, yeah, they've been losing, and losing is just gonna make you look worse. So with Colin Sexton, I think the knock on him, talented scorer. He is an undersized shooting guard that has limited playmaking skills, especially if he's going to play the one, which I'm assuming if he comes to the Knicks, he would be the one. Everyone's saying, like, yo, we can't assist, whatnot. I believe there's a user on Twitter, State, shout out to him if he ever listens to this. He talked about when Darius Garland was not playing, Sexton averaged 6 assists per game, which I think is pretty good. So
Especially on the Cavs, who have
on the
literally no one you can assist to.
rolling out lineups with Drummond and McGee. So yeah, I'm not surprised that it doesn't look too good on Sexton's playmaking skills. Because what do you look what you're putting out now? In terms of like how he'd fit on the Knicks, uh, the fit with RJ and Randall is a bit questionable to me because these are three dudes who do need the ball in their hands. I think again, me and Damien always think that the Knicks should do a better job at getting RJ the ball a lot more often. I feel like a lot of times, especially towards the end of games, it was too Randall ISO heavy, and it's hard because there was so many times where RJ had to be like a spot up shooter, and I was like, okay, this is why I personally want Lonzo because Lonzo could facilitate for RJ and for Randall, but especially for RJ because we want to see him getting like more plays for him. So I think with Colin Sexton, yeah, the fit is questionable, but look, in 2018, this was the guy I wanted for them. I know like Dame wanted Michael Porter Jr., but I thought because of the back injury stuff, I wasn't too sold on him, and I thought he was going to get taken within the first 5, but that didn't happen. So Colin Sexton won, I think, a pick before us. I did want Colin Sexton from the beginning, but in totality of it, I do want Colin Sexton on the Knicks. I actually want the trade to go through because I think it would solve our 20-year point guard quest, in which we were looking for a one desperately. I think the Knicks have enough playmaking with because Randall and RJ actually are decent playmakers to a point where Colin doesn't have to necessarily play make. They need a bucket getter, and I feel like he is that guy. Again, I also think a change of scenery would benefit him. I think, look, he's actually a good shooter. I believe he shot almost 40% from three last season. Every season he's gone up in points per game. I think he'll have a lob throw with Mitchell Robinson. I feel like he'd have more options with the Knicks than opposed to the Cavs because you have two centerpieces in RJ and Julius Randle. And then, of course, you have a center that could just catch anything, and then it'll be up to the Knicks to kind of fill out other roster spots. So I think he would be really good on the Knicks. Also, if you want to take into account his character, he's a dog. And I think MSG would totally embrace Colin Sexton. And, like, Trae Young wouldn't bitch us out. Like, you see Reggie Bullock literally get bitched out. I'm not even talking about on offense and defense, but, like, you need a guy to kind of step up to these guys. And again, we saw Colin versus Trae in college. So I think it would be pretty fun, especially because of this renewed rivalry between the Knicks and the Hawks. So I think character-wise, I think play style-wise, I think it'll work. I really think it'll work. He seems like a Tibbs guy too, and I just think Colin needs a change of scenery. I think too many people are overinflating his flaws. Again, yes, I understand there's like a cause for concern. Look what happened to Randall, man. Like I feel like too many times we're so quick to like write off these young guys, especially when they're on franchises like the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I think Colin would be perfect for New York. I think we need his scoring. I think we need his character. He fits this kind of like grit and grind identity that we've established. So that's all I got to say about it. Dame?
You said a lot of things I was gonna say. Just to kind of reiterate and put my own spin on it. I obviously do want Colin Sexton on the Knicks. He personally going into this offseason was probably third on my wish list for point guards, but like kind of first two are maybe a little unlikely. Chris Paul and Lonzo Ball. But Colin Sexton, I've been a fan of him since college. I've always watched him. I met him in person actually. Um,
Yes.
yes. But yeah, I've always been a fan of him in college. That when he almost won that 3-on-5 game all by
Woo.
himself, basically he's basically playing 1-on-5, but he only had two teammates. It was kind of ridiculous. But just something like that, you just know the kind of player he is. He's not that kind of Ben Simmons who really doesn't care. He's a dog, like Chris said. He's always trying to win. He's always trying to get better. He'll do whatever he needs to for his team to give his team the best chance to win. As for the Knicks, like I know he's obviously not the perfect player, or the Cavs wouldn't be trying to trade him and he'd be locked up there already. But he has his flaws, but he's a good defender. He can shoot the ball. Brings high energy, which obviously with the Knicks you see how crazy MSG gets during regular season and the playoffs. Adding a guy like that, it's gonna take it to a whole nother level. The Knicks haven't had a good point guard in God knows how long. Like Raymond Felton was alright, but like that's our like moments of fame with Raymond Felton. So bringing Colin Sexton, I think would be great. He can obviously shoot the ball, so he's gonna be able to spread the floor on like guys like Payne and Frank who we're not able to do. Um, as for the offer that we'd have to give up, I read that was Opie, Knox, and the 21st pick, I believe. Like to me, like that's a no brainer.
Steal.
Knox has like literally no trade value in this league right now. Opie Toppin, the draft was so bad last year, so you could say he was the 8th pick, but in reality, he's not really that good. He's not really a top 10 worthy pick. He showed signs this year, but for a guy like Sexton, you're gonna have to give up something. So I guess I look at it as like Obi Toppin the 21st pick, and Kevin Knox is kind of like
Yeah.
just get him off the roster. So to me, I don't think you're gonna get a better player than Colin Sexton at 21, and just Obi Toppin's a throw in. You keep your 19th pick, which is good. You keep the higher the pick to draft a wing, hopefully a shooter. Overall, I really hope this happens. Just for me being a fan of Colin Sexton, and just for the Knicks to get better, they need to add this kind of like young,
Mm-hmm.
young talented players that have a lot of potential instead of these like mediocre like old veteran guys. They need to add this young spark to have this core grow together. Not have like veteran come in now and then leave the next year. You need to build a solid young core so they can all grow together and build a solid foundation.
I think for Jurg goes, I think Colin, Randall, RJ, Mitch, and I think they're gonna have to look long and hard for that coveted wing spot. That's a pretty good young core to
Absolutely.
build around. I
Well,
think
not
that
yeah. No, he
go ahead,
finished
go ahead.
that.
No, I mean, no, I just think that that's a really good core to build around, and I think that they could make some noise, especially if they could get like a good 3-and-D wing shooter, then they'll be in good hands to compete with like the young and upcoming teams. So, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead, Dean.
absolutely. Just one thing I more wanted to mention. I know a lot of people talk about how like he's on the Cavs and that's why he's having all these empty stats, but like I'm not saying he's gonna be as good as him, but like a lot of people said that about Devin Booker before the season. Like they said he was
And Trey
just on a
Young.
bad team, yeah, and Trey Young. They were just putting on bad stats. I mean, great stats on bad teams. That was the only reason they showed out so good. But then you add players, you add pieces to those teams to that build a solid foundation. They go to the playoffs and actually get to show out on a winning team, and that whole narrative changes. So I'm not saying he's going to be as good as them, but like you can't judge these young guys that put up great stats on and saying it's just because they're on a bad team. You got to wait and you got to put them in a good, solid team and put great players around them and see what happens.
Yeah, and now we move on over to Jurg, whose favorite team is also eyeing Colin Sexton because the Heat apparently are also aggressive suitors for Colin Sexton. So Jurg, what do you got?
Um, if you're the Knicks, make the damn deal if that's what's offered. I just want to say really fast about what Dame is talking about. Like everyone that's getting on Colin Sexton and his time with the Cavs. Uh, uh, I saw a tweet about this. Someone pointed out the plus minus numbers for him these
Oh
last couple
God.
seasons. I just this is why I want to say because I like the fact that Dame brought up the book. So in 2019 to 2020, the Sexton's plus minus was a minus 397, right? And then this past season it was minus 377. In Devin Booker's time in Phoenix, this were some of his plus minuses. In 15-16, his plus minus was a minus 373. In 16-17, it was a minus 225. In 17-18, it was a minus 358. And in 2018-2019, it was a minus 331. You cannot put in any way, shape, or form the failure of the Cavaliers to even become half decent on Colin Sexton. You just can't. Like you said, when he's gonna be out there with lineups with JaVale McGee and Andre Drummond, who's overrated, and like one arm and one knee or whatever's left of Kevin Love's body after all these years in Cleveland. Who is supposed to win with that? LeBron barely won with talent like that. I mean, great, like I said, it's LeBron. He could bring that team to the playoffs. Obviously, Colin Sexton ain't LeBron, so no, we're not going to penalize him for not being one of the greatest players to ever play the game. So let's look at this from a realistic point of view where honestly, if you're the Cavs, if you can get back in a deal, just two prospects that you could potentially work on and a first round pick back, like you take it because Colin Sexton, I'm kind of on the fence about him. I do like Colin Sexton. I feel he's a Tom Thibodeau like player, and I also feel like he'd be like a Pat Riley type player. So the Knicks and Heat being in this conversation, it's very much warranted because he is this hustle guy, gives everything he has defensively, but he actually has some offense to him. Now, obviously, I don't think his stats will necessarily translate fully. I don't think he's going to be right off the bat. It may take a little bit of time depending on the fit. I don't think he'll be a 20-point per game player off the bat, or at least for a consistent length of time. But what he could be is 18 to 19 points, another guy to create shots for himself. And like we've said, that defender. And heck, who knows if his passing may or may not get better because he's actually passing it to real teammates. Who did he have to pass to in Cleveland?
Besides Garland, yeah.
But here's the thing: Garland was supposed to be the playmaker, so you're
Yeah.
taking the playmaking out of Sexton's hands and giving it to another guard. Which, yes, Cleveland, you draft one guard, let's draft another. But like, it's just so. Aside from just burying the Cleveland Cavaliers here, the point is Colin Sexton is one of those guys where on a good team, you will see that team accentuate his strengths and not the bad parts about him. I said this about Frank Ntilikina throughout the beginning of his career. On a better team, fans would love him. A lot of Knick fans have been hard on him because he was drafted high and because with that comes the expectation he's supposed to make the difference. No, Frank Ntilikina is a defensive guard. He'll have that one game here and there where he gets 20 points, but his sole purpose is to rebound and defend well. On a Miami Heat, Frank Ntilikina would have been a fan favorite for his hustle. On the Knicks, he would get booed for being a lottery pick but not scoring 15 points per game. That's just how life in the NBA works. So for Colin Sexton, he's another guy to create offense for himself. And honestly, like if you look at these playoffs, the Knicks need another scorer. Julius Randle, like you could say whatever you want. There needs to be another guy that could score the ball near him because I don't know if it was Atlanta's defense. I don't know if Randle got it in his own head. I don't know what it was, but the offense for him was a complete 180 come playoff time. And you can't have that happen to your who's supposed to be your best player. Now, I'm not saying Sexton's going to be a better player,
Mhm.
but he could alleviate the pressure, which is what you need. You need to do one of two things if you're the well. Technically, you also need a playmaker, but in terms of helping Randall and RJ, you either need to get another all-star caliber player that's better than Randall to be the real guy on this team, and it makes their lives easier, or you get another player that could be on their caliber but could still score like 20 points per game and help the two of them out. It needs to be one of those two things. I've said this, I'll say this again. If this exact same Knicks team is back next season, but there isn't a significant addition on this team, they will make the playoffs. They're not getting past the first round. The Knicks have to do something here.
Mhm.
And if Colin Sexton, if the organization convinces themselves Colin Sexton could be that move, you go for that move, especially because it's not costing you anything. It's costing you Knox, Toppin, and the first. That's like me, being upgraded from 2 economy class tickets to Idaho to a first class round trip to Miami, Florida, or to Vegas. Like, come on, that's what we're talking about here. You're not giving up anything, and you're gonna get back a guy that could score 20 a game, or will at least help your two current like key pieces. I don't see the negative in it. I just don't. And he's a defensive player. He's a Thibodeau player.
Yeah.
He is a Thibodeau player. So yes, of course, the fit on the court will take some time, but that's literally anyone. Like while the Suns started out this season good, guarantee you, Chris Paul would say it took 25 games or so to really get used to understanding where do I want to get book the ball? Where is it best that I could get Aiton his shots? Like it takes time. If you're not willing to be that patient, they shouldn't, like, the Knicks needs to stop putting themselves in the conversation for everyone. Because at the end of the day, there needs to be patience when it comes to getting these kinds of players. It just does.
Okay, so I also think the the knock on Sexton would be like you have to eventually pay him because he's going to command I guess whatever his max is. I think the thing is like yeah, I understand the risk of paying Colin Sexton $100+ million over the next 5 years, right? For the Knicks though, I think you have a year to see how he would fit. It's kind of like a trial, essentially. This is a conversation I have with my dad. This is the next generation of players, though. You're gonna have to pay. Like these are your guys going forward. There was like I remember this conversation I had with one of my friends. It was just like, would you give a max to Brandon Ingram? And I remember this is before he actually re-signed. I was like,
Right.
nah, no shot. I would not re-sign Brandon Ingram. Why would I want to re-sign Brandon Ingram for a max? But then like he has that season and like he established himself into like a very, very good wing player, and he deserves the max. And it's like, yeah, these are the guys that are kind of leading the league ahead in the next 5 to 10 years. So
These are the players that are going to get the max. Like, what we need to understand is that the salary cap and contracts are going to keep going up. It's no longer a thing
yeah,
where an all-star is 15 million a year. That doesn't exist. Three
it's not
points
anymore. Yeah.
3-point specialists get 15 million a year.
Hmm.
Joe Harris, Davis Bertans, Duncan Robinson's going to get paid this offseason. Like, you don't get an all-star for 15 million a year anymore. So like the thing with paying Colin Sexton is that, yeah, no duh, he's going to get paid. That's how the league works. Like, this is it's funny enough, I had a conversation with like a couple of my other coworkers, like was that we do podcasts with, about this. Like, what is the idea with fans, like the delusion that you're going to get all these 20-point per game players, or like in hockey, like these 30-goal scorers, but you need to give up like a 7th round pick in hockey, or like a second rounder in the NBA, and then they're only going to want 5 million a year somehow, and all of them are going to play. That's not how it works. With professional sports, and yes, I know these are 2 specific examples, or 3: the Red Wings, the Spurs, and the Patriots. All 3 of those franchises the last 25 years have been absolute excellence. You want to know why? Is because they know when to spend money, they know when not to spend money, but it's constantly bringing in talent on a consistent basis. And yes, I know those are the 3 extreme examples, but they also know when to pay players. They'll pay the guys. You need to understand, at some point you need to pay your players. You cannot keep doing a cycle of, okay, we get these guys cheap value, then trade them, get these next group of guys, because eventually that cycle is going to break. You're going to hit wrong on your trades, and you're going to go from a 50-win team that should have had all the potential in the world to maybe win a championship to a 25-win team. Look at a little bit of a different situation, but look at what happened in Minnesota with Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, Cat, and Wiggins were supposed to be a playoff team for 3, 4, 5 years, everyone was saying. And considering what we saw from Jimmy in 2020, maybe they could have made a run to at least the conference finals. But that didn't happen. Yes, for locker room reasons, but also Minnesota was doubting if they should give Jimmy the max. you can't keep these guys on these cheap deals forever. That's not how it works. And look what happened to Minnesota. They went from finally making the playoffs again to being one of the worst teams in the league the last few years.
Yeah, yeah, especially the Knicks, who have the most cap space in the league. They're gonna have to eventually spend that, right? And I don't know. It's just you can't be banking off. Well, yeah, we're gonna test free agency next year. I get the patience. I've been a huge fan of the way they've approached things, the last few years. Not overspending, but at some point, it's like you're gonna like if your plan is to wait for like a Zion or a Donovan Mitchell to hit the trade market, it's gonna be a while till that happens. So I feel like you have to like legitimately look at this and view it as a very realistic option. Last thing I'm gonna say before we wrap it up, there's been I'm pretty sure you guys have heard there's like those there's been articles of just like, oh, Colin Sexton's not a great teammate, right? I am 99% sure this type of stuff was leaked by Kevin Love. Kevin Love,
Yes, I love it. Keep going. My bad. Keep going.
who has been the biggest bitch in the league the last 2 years, freaking getting tight at his coach, flinging the ball to his teammates. Literally, they pass him the ball for like in the inbounds, and then he just lets it go, turning it over, turns it like being the biggest piece of garbage. Why do I care what Kevin Love says? Because the way he's handled himself these last couple years on the Cavs, you're the one that's being a bad teammate. You're the one that's probably not taking Colin Sexton under the wing because you're tight that you're stuck in Cleveland, which this is your fault. You took the money instead of just, kind of just like, just gonna go somewhere else to like chase winning. No,
Several
you wanted
times,
the
by
money.
the way.
You
Several
wanted the
times.
money. You stay there, and now you're complaining about this young and up and coming dude. Like, this is the thing. I just saw the episode of Colin Sexton. He was on JJ Redick's podcast, and he says how he like kind of assumed the role of like this, this little bit of a mentor, a little bit of a veteran presence towards Isaac Okoro, who he's known for a while. And he's like, yeah, I never had that going in. And because Colin came in during a very weird transitional period with the Cavs because they fired Ty Lue, LeBron left, Kevin Love re-signed, J.R. Smith was on and off. They eventually let him go. So like these veterans were kind of in and out, and Kevin Love, who you see on the court, has instances of being a little scumbag. He's not the veteran that you want to give you guidance because clearly he's not. He doesn't want that. So I feel bad for Colin because he hasn't had that mentor to be like to kind of put him under the wing and be like, all right, this is how you need to do things, this and that. So he's kind of been given the keys to this franchise, I think, albeit for a year, without any guidance, which I think hurts a lot. I think again, Cleveland is Cleveland, but it's just I do like this bad teammate thing. I am taking it with a grain of salt because again, I have 99% sure it was Kevin Love, and I am not taking Kevin Love's input into this heavily. No shot. Because of from what I've seen from that dude, no. Jurg, you wanted to say something?
No, personally, I love your theory, and I could honestly see something to it. Like every single locker room has someone that's going to leak something. These insiders have their sources for a reason. Sometimes it's executives, sometimes it's coaches, sometimes it's players. And honestly, I think everything you're saying kind of adds up, Chris, because I don't think Kevin Love's been that much of a veteran for Cleveland since LeBron has left. I think he's just been taking the money and biding his time. Like Kevin, I remember earlier this season we were talking about Kyrie, and he could be one of these guys that retires at 31, 32, or Kawhi Leonard with this injury. Like, could Kawhi be a guy that retires early? Kevin Love, like, I'm sorry, I think he should retire early. Like, he won't because I think he's still getting paid for another few seasons. But I really hope when his contract's done, like, Kevin Love retires at this point because, like, at best, he's going to be a stretch four, like, as a role player. And do you really want to see him go from all-star to role player who would still have the injury issues? Like, Kevin Love would break his hand at this point trying to sign the contract. So I don't. Yeah, honestly, I see your theory, Chris. I buy it. I fully buy into it. I really do.
Thank you.
Because I don't think, like, I hate to say it, but I don't think Kevin Love's the good kind of veteran. Because I completely forgot with the Colin Sexton being on JJ Redick's podcast that, like, he kind of detailed, like, yeah, I didn't really have a smooth transition coming in, and that could, honestly, transition, like, rookies coming into the league, they need a good environment. Like, we've seen how many guys, like, I'm not saying they all would have been all-stars, no, not by any means, but how many guys could have been like 10-year career veterans or have been a starter maybe for a period of time, but because the start of their career was so garbage, they never had a chance to develop because either the coaching did them in or the locker room they came into was one in crisis, and it's like, oh, we don't care about it. And when you put a young player into this environment of everyone's out there for themselves, these pros have families to feed, they don't care about mentoring the young kid, you're throwing him to the wolves, and he's not going to succeed there. He's just not.
He's not, and like I think it's a plethora of things. And like Colin, you could see from his character that he's like that guy. He's that dog. So it's again, I think just a really bad timing and just a really bad situation that he came into. So yeah, Dame, I'm sorry. Do you have any thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
No, I just really hope he's a Knick to start the season.
Okay, that's a perfect way to end this podcast. So, everyone who's listened so far up to this point, thank you so much. We appreciate y'all. Jurg and Dame, phenomenal job as always. Your expertise, analysis, just A1. Nobody better. And yeah, hopefully we'll be back next week with more stuff. I think since we're kind of near the NBA draft, we're going to get a lot more stuff to talk about. And since we're near the NHL draft, Jurg will have more stuff to talk about as well.
Yes, sir.
And hopefully we get some NFL news because it's been a while. Yeah. So, Jurg, where can the people find us on the socials?
At SomeWhat.Sports for Instagram. That's the only one we have right now. But don't worry. It's Somewhat Sports Summer 2021, boys. We're always gonna push that. We're small. We just started out recently, but the brand is growing. The brand is growing. You can find us on our WordPress, which, by the way, because I can't update this, I'm working currently in the lab right now for the second NHL mock draft article right now, and it'll be posted up definitely quite a few days before the NHL entry draft itself. So yeah, I'm excited to finish up that, and I keep checking up the WordPress because articles are going to be coming out whenever they get done. And of course, right now on Instagram, SomeWhat.Sports, we're doing our series where we're kind of giving a preview into every single team's offseason in the NBA, just some questions that they may have, key players, who's up, needs, all that kind of good stuff on the post that were phenomenally edited, by the way, phenomenally created. So you got to make sure to check that out because we're putting out all the content out there for you guys.
Yes sir. Thank you, by the way, Jurg. Yeah, just a matter of when people decide to peep our shit. But yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Jurg and Dame, thank you again, even though I said it once. And until next time, peace.
Peace.
Take care.